I used my new Cricut Joy to make some stencils for my rock painting, and it was mildly disastrous. But since you guys enjoy seeing the successes and the failures, let's get into this and see how it went. I had a few homemade stones and I decided to base coat them black because my vision was to use the Iulie watercolors for this design experiment. So for the Cricut product, I used removable vinyl because I figured I could maybe reuse the stencils that I created. You can barely see them on here. I've weeded out this flower so you can see that one the best, but there are some pretty intricate designs in here. And the first thing you have to do is what they call weeding out the pieces that don't belong on the design. So you use this pokey tool. I'm sure there's a technical term for it. I don't know what it is. But you use the pokey tool to kind of peel out the little pieces that are the center of the design. Now you can see the design a little better now that those little pieces are out, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out my 3 to 4 designs, and then I'm going to pull off the design very carefully and begin placing them on my little homemade stones. These are about 2-inch stones, and the one thing that I discovered pretty quickly is that with these kind of intricate designs, because the stone is rounded on top, they don't necessarily lay flat. So you can really see it here where I had to kind of smooth out those lines and try and fix them. On this last one, I decided to put it on a Santorini square because I wanted to try it on the smooth stone and because it's flat. After having a little bit of trouble with the last one, trying to get those lines to lay down nice and smooth, I thought this would be an interesting experiment to see how it worked on the flat, smooth stone as well. So here's the 4 experimental rocks, and my thought is to prep these Iulie watercolors and then just kind of fill in almost like a coloring book with the watercolors, and then we'll peel the stencil off and see what kind of cool design we end up with. This one is a little harder to see because these particular watercolors are kind of a dark pearl color changing type of colors, so they're blending in with the black, but they're very pretty once they get on a black background. One other consideration with these Iulie watercolors, which is whenever I use them, is the consistency. So if they're too watery, it kind of, especially with the domed effect of the rock, it can kind of start sliding towards the edge of the rock. Plus, with this, I was worried if it was too watery that it would slide underneath my stencil, like maybe that wasn't sealed completely. Happened a little bit on some of these, but not too bad. So for most part, it was working like I wanted it to and kind of keeping the borders secure, so to speak. Now this cute little flower I think ended up being the most simple and kind of the safest of all of the designs because it didn't have too much intricate design work to it. The spaces were larger, the stencil peeled off, it laid well on the domed effect of the rock, and it was just very simple and fun to watch the watercolors kind of sparkle their way in there, and very simple, very cute, very appropriate for the center of one of these little circular stones. And because the Santorini is really light and bright, I decided to pull out my rainbow colors, and I thought this particular stencil lent itself really well to kind of a spinning rainbow design. So I just went to town getting all the colors on there getting them in all the little nooks and crannies. I added some champagne sparkle in it as well, and this was a lot of fun to watch this one come together. So I guess if you like coloring books but with a paintbrush, this one was super fun to put on. It was a nice flat surface. The Santorini stone kind of soaks up the watercolor really nicely. And then I moved on to this round one, which I really like the design on this one, the stencil itself. And I decided to pull out, I have this dot card of Iulie watercolors that's kind of gold, champagne, and copper sparkles. So I pulled that one out to do this design, and again, soaked it up really well. I had a little bit of leakage that kind of snuck out, but that's also easy to fix too. Now to fix some of those areas where it dripped out, I just came back with a disposable eyeliner brush and some black paint and just touched it up. That is the beauty of working on top of black paint. This wouldn't work on top of the Santorini, but here you can kind of correct your errors. Now comes the mild disaster part. So I started working on peeling off the stencil and realized very quickly that these were not going to be reusable like I thought. They started falling apart, I think because they're thin and they probably got a little brittle when they were on there, but it also pulled off a lot of the black paint. So I started getting kind of meticulous with how I was pulling it off, trying to get them in little dribs and drabs, using my hands when I could so I wouldn't damage it too much, but it definitely pulled off the black paint. So I was also a little more careful pulling this off the Santorini. I kind of went for all the points to kind of loosen up the stencil so that I could eventually grab it with my fingers or these tweezers and just gently pull it off of the Santorini. So this one did the best with removing the stencil, and I think it's because there was no paint underneath like the black paint. This worked really well. The black paint, not so much. The little flower worked out okay, only a few little things to touch up, but the more intricate designs were kind of disastrous. So I came back with some fine line thin brushes and the black paint to kind of clean up the edges. This flower needed the least amount of work, just kind of some touch up around the edges, whereas the other designs needed almost design correction. So I had to come in and try and fill in the lines where the stencil had been, and this one was not as intricate as the others, but I noticed that my lines were not turning out as evenly spaced as the original stencil was. So sometimes you just decide to cover it up. That's the beauty of black paint. I'm not going to worry about this one. I'll make a mandala on it. This other one, the lines kind of, I don't know, they just worked better with the way they were curved and angled, that I was able to take a disposable eyeliner brush and just kind of clean up the lines where there should have been black paint, where it got pulled up. And I was able to salvage this one by just carefully going through with the disposable eyeliner brush. So I think one of the other considerations in doing this is it worth it? So it does give you a nice intricate design, but I'm also having to backtrack a lot to correct where the paint got yanked up. So I don't know that I would do this again on these rounded stones, because the stencils didn't want to lay down as nice and flat, and you have to paint these stones. There's no way around that. You have to paint them, and so the paint is probably going to get pulled up by this removable vinyl. I have no idea what it would do with the permanent vinyl, probably even worse. So I don't know that it's worth it for the round stones. For the Santorini, on the other hand, this was a lot of fun. I might do it again for Santorinis. I decided to come back and add a bit of a rainbow border just to kind of tie it all together. The design itself looked like it was just kind of lost in the middle of the stone. So I came back and took all 8 of those colors and just kind of blended them together and made a rainbow border around the design. And again, Santorinis are just really easy to work with. So they kind of, we didn't have a level playing field with this experiment. But I did add some accents to the little round stones with some dots, and I put bloom on this one, and I wrote shine in the middle of this one, and I think they actually turned out really cute. And the winner that saved the whole experiment was the Santorini square, and I love writing on the sides of these, so little extra bonus for the finder. Let me know in the comments if you've ever tried using your Cricut to make stencils. Thank you so much for stopping by to watch, and I'll see you next time. Take care.